So thank you very much, organizers of the conference. I'm really grateful that you have given me chance to present some of your work. So my name is Babar Shahbaz, as you have already introduced, and I will be presenting on the food waste management in Pakistan, challenges, opportunities, and ways forward. So first of all, food waste and food lost. Usually, we use these words interchangeably, but there is some difference between food waste and food loss. Food loss is the decrease in the quantity and quality of food resulting from decision and action by food supply chain, excluding retail, food service providers, and consumers. So food loss is the loss of food occur at the initial stage of the food supply chain. And food waste occurs, it is basically decrease in the quality or quantity of food resulting from decision and action by retailer, food service provider, and consumer. So at the consumer level, whatever food is spoiled or wasted, it is food waste. And before reaching to the consumer or retailer, it is the food lost. And collectively, both of these terms lead to the food wastage. So food waste can occur. So my presentation is basically on the food waste. So food waste can occur at different stages. First of all is the fresh produce that deviates from what is considered optimal, for example, in terms of shape, size, and color. So this type of food waste occurs mostly for the fruit and vegetables. The fresh produce, if their shape and color is not good or consumers are not preferring that shape or color or size, then this type of produce is discarded and it goes to the waste. And second type of food waste is basically related to the best before date or expiry date. So that often discarded by the retailers and consumers. And the largest quantity of food waste is the edible food, which is the prepared or cooked food that is often unused or leftover or discarded from, for example, household kitchen or eating establishment from the food service industry. So these are basically three major types or major events where food waste occurs. So this can be the cooked food, which is leftover food from the food service industries or ceremonies, or it may be the food, fresh food, or the food which is packed food, which has been expired or which has been close to the expiry date. So this was a brief overview of why the food waste occur and what are the major types of food waste, and now why food waste management matters, why it is important to manage and reduce the food waste. First of all, the overall food system are contributing up to 80% of biodiversity loss. In fact, food production is the single major utilizer of the natural resources, the land, the water, the environment, and 80% of biodiversity loss occurs due to the food system, the food production system. And it consumes 70% of the fresh water globally. And in Pakistan, because Pakistan is an agricultural country, and here more than 85% of fresh water is consumed on the production of food. And it is the contributing 1/3 to the greenhouse gas emissions. And globally, in 2019, 931 million tons of food waste was generated. And now, recently, this figure has crossed 1.3 billion tons. 61% of total food waste come from the household, 26% from food service, and 13% from the retails. So food waste matters because roughly about 1/3 of food produced globally is lost or wasted. As you can see in this graph, in this diagram, that in all of the region of the world, the roughly 1/3 of the food is wasted, although in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, the food waste is lowest. The food lost is higher, but the amount of malnutrition and hunger is highest in these two regions, Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And therefore, the issue of food waste becomes a matter of serious concern because food insecurity, malnutrition, hunger is highest in the poorest region of the world, and the food waste is also high in these regions. So food waste management matters because, as I said, that 700 to 800 million people around the globe are facing hunger and undernourishment. 1 in every 3 persons did not have access to adequate food in 2020. And 1 in 10% remain hungry every day. 2 billion people are suffering from micronutrient deficiency. So on one hand, more than 1/3 of global food is going to waste or lost. And the other side of the picture is that the malnourishment, hunger, and nutrient deficiency is very high in many parts of the world. So that's why the food waste management is important. And food waste management also important because Sustainable Development Goal 12 calls for ensuring sustainable production and consumption pattern. And particularly the target 12.3 of SDG 12 is about halving the world food waste at the consumer, retail, and household level, and also reducing the food loss by 2030, by the year 2030. So the world, according to SDG target 12.3, the world is committed to cut half of the global food waste by the year 2030. And also the very important SDG 2, zero hunger. So without the reducing or halving the food waste, the maybe the target of zero hunger would be very difficult to achieve. So now this was the general overview, global overview of the food waste and food loss. And now I come to the Pakistan. In Pakistan alone, 36 million tons of food is wasted in Pakistan. And according to the study, 40% of cooked food is wasted in Pakistan, which is very high percentage. And according to another study, 30% of total municipal waste in big city comprised of the food waste, and 74 kg per capita per year household food waste. So this is one side of the picture, and the other side is that food insecurity is very high in Pakistan. 43% of the citizens remain food insecure, and 18% of Pakistan citizens are facing severe shortage of food. And according to the Global Hunger Index, Pakistan ranks as a country with serious hunger level. So this is a study conducted some year back about the municipal waste in Karachi, which is the largest metropolitan city. And the study was conducted in low, middle, and high income classes. And during the different days of the week. And you can see that in the municipal waste, the food waste is highest. In any day, be it the Friday, Sunday, or in any household level, be it medium, low, middle, or high income class. So food waste is around 40 to 50%. And the second important waste is the plastic waste. or the miscellaneous. So plastic waste also become high during the weekend because, of course, due to the packaging of food. Because after during the COVID lockdown, as Dr. Maiman has elaborated, that during COVID lockdown, the household takeaways and food packaging become very high, and therefore the plastic waste also increased. So food waste comprise 30% of the total municipal waste of Pakistan, and food waste is highest in middle income class of people, followed by low income and high income class. The biggest contributors to food wastage in Pakistan are highly perishable items like vegetable and fruit, followed by bakery item and dairy products. So food wastage occurs along the whole supply chain of the food. The primary production of food are agriculture, livestock, and fisheries. And then from here, the food goes to the production industries. So there it is the food loss, and then it goes to the distribution and the consumption, the food service industry, household, large scale catering industries. The whole supply chain of food, the food is lost or wasted. So for example, at the farm level, the food is lost at the harvesting, threshing, storage due to the insect attack, extreme weather condition, transportation problem. At the processor and distributor end, the food again is lost during processing, the grading, as I said, that due to the size and shape of perishable items, the food is discarded. Spillage and spoilage due to the improper packaging, storing. And then at the wholesalers, where the food waste occur, overstocking, poor storage, and the most of the wholesaler or the storage are very informal. There is very little options of the cold storage. So poor handling and the loss of quality. At the food storage industry, the highest amount of food waste occurs due to the large portion size. People take more food than required. It is wasted during the cooking, expiration, leftover food, and the consumer level, poor storage and handling, improper cooking, surplus food or plate waste. So this is the whole supply chain of food where food waste occurs and or the food loss occurs. So there are various, in fact, this is a very simplified picture of the supply chain, but the actual situation is very complicated. There are various chains within the food supply chain at the retail level. Some of the main supply chains where most of the food waste occurs are, for example, fruit and vegetable supply chain, dairy supply chain, meat supply chain, grain or cereal, oil crops and pulse supply chain. For example, I gave an example of the dairy supply chain, where according to a study, 12% of overall food waste is in the dairy supply chain. So dairy farm in Pakistan, most of the dairy supply chain is in informal sector. Only 3%, this is a bit old study, and now 10% of the dairy products goes to the formal sector and 90% of the dairy products go to the informal sector. So in the formal sector, it goes to the packaged milk or cheese and the powder milk, retailer and consumer. So here food loss is, food waste is a minimum, but more than 90% of the food of the dairy supply chain goes to the informal sector, where the milkman collect the milk informally from the farms, from the farmers, and it distribute on their motorbikes or on their like a vehicle to the retailers or the dairy shops, and then it goes to the consumer. So this is a whole supply chain of dairy where the food waste occurs at the different stages. So similarly, in the other similar situation is in the other supply chain where most of the chain is in the informal sector. So food waste occurs, particularly the cooked food waste occur in the wedding reception, which is the major contributor to the food waste, festivals, religious festivals, hotel restaurants, and the surge in food takeaway during the COVID, which is basically the food packaging waste. So now we come to the food waste management. What are the opportunities? What are the options? So there is the concept of sharing economy, and there is the concept of circular economy, and there are some green technologies from that we can manage the food, or we can redistribute, or we can circulate the food. So sharing economy, the concept is based on the peer-to-peer networking. Like we have the concept of shared vehicles, shared residences, for example, the transport service, people are sharing their transport. The similar concept is in the food sharing in terms of food banks and food sharing applications. So circular economy is reduce, reuse, recycle, we all know. And there are some conventional technologies like composting, converting food waste into the fertilizer or the biogas plant. But this conventional technology, this depend on the segregation of food, municipal waste into the organic and non-organic. So food has to be discarded separately. But in Pakistan, unfortunately, this is not the case. So first of all, I will discuss about the sharing economy. So the food banks, so there is a global food banking network. It is in the 44 countries. It is an informal, it is a sort of charitable, non-for-profit organization. So there are food banks in 44 countries and it is expanding. They distributed about 1 billion kg of food and grocery, leftover foods to the people, and 9 million people served. And they also use the digital app. How the food banks works, they collect the surplus food from the government commodities, farms, grocery, fisheries, manufacturing industry, consumers, product markets, and it goes to the food banks from where through various means it is delivered to the people in need who want to have the food. So this is the concept of sharing economy, the food banks. And there is an initiative in Pakistan too, which is called as the RISK. So RISK means the food. So it is a Pakistan-based social enterprise with focus on the food waste and reduction. It has developed a business model for providing marketplace for food donor and food insecure household. The enterprise has connections with restaurants, caterers, bakeries, and charge minimal fees to take their excessive food and hence act as service provider for waste disposal. So they have different initiatives, like they share the surplus food, they provide school lunch to the needy children, they support the family, and they feed the hungry people. They have developed a database of the colonies or slums where the people, food insecure people or malnutritious people lives, and they collect food from the different businesses, food service industry, and distribute to the. So this is a simple model of the food bank. And in fact, they have joined the Cargill, which is the US company, and first ever food bank, namely Cargill Risk Bank. So they offer 4 major services to food insecure slum communities in Pakistan. Supply of food to the communities, identifying and delivering monthly food to the food insecure household, gathering and distributing surplus food to poor household, and social mobilization of youth from educational institutions to support activities of zero hunger and zero waste. So this is one example of the circular economy or sharing economy, that how surplus food can be redistributed. So another example is the mobile applications. So these applications are in place in many countries. In Pakistan too, there is application which is very new. It is still developing stage, which is called the sharing out. So it connects users with the local food business to share the surplus food. The restaurant and other food enterprise can post the pictures and retail detail of their surplus food, and the consumer can see the post, select and arrange a pickup. So there are some, so these are some of the examples of sharing economy. And I said, as I said that there are some conventional technologies like conversion of food into the fertilizer and the biogas. But for this, food has to be segregated in the waste. And in Pakistan, there is almost no system of segregation of waste. So there are some regulations on the food wastage. For example, Punjab Food Authority has established a regulation, Disposal of Excess Food Regulation 2019. So Punjab is the largest province of Pakistan. So food operators and all those who manufacture food items for sale, transport, storage and distribution or trade or donate excess food to the donor. So this is a regulation. So these donations are then distributed among the underprivileged or food insecure household. So this is one regulation. And then other regulation is one dish rule during the marriage ceremony. So in Punjab province, there is a rule that during marriage ceremony, you can serve only one dish. So this is a rule, but implementation of this rule is not very good. So what are the barriers in the adoption of food waste management technologies? So first of all, lack of education and awareness, poor accessibility to technologies, because the most people working in the informal food industry, they have not very good education or computer literacy. Technology factors are there. Technologies have to be less complicated and affordable. Infrastructure and cost is high. Poor implementation of regulation, lack of effective monitoring and evaluation, lack of credible data. So these are some of the barriers in the adoption of food waste management. So now what are the ways forward? Education and awareness, and globally there are best practices and technologies in the advanced countries. These has to be replicated into the developing countries. Incentives and subsidy mechanism has to be provided. Credible data on food waste. This is the major problem, because in Pakistan and like in many developing countries of Asia and Africa, the credible data on the type and amount of food waste is lacking. Sharing and circular economy, enhanced public-private partnership. So how we can move towards the circular and sharing economy? For food waste management in Pakistan, a circular economy for food waste management system would present additional economic and environmental benefit. Government have to properly adopt and apply this concept in the food system. So recently in September, we have the food summit conference, food summit by the United Nations. And in that summit, the government were considered the major actors in the circular economy and this food, particularly the food waste management system. And there is absence of robust legislation, robust data on the quantity and type of food waste is also needed. The existing food waste management practices, strategies are based on linear model and have negative impact on the environment. Solid waste management strategies in many cities have yet to prioritize and segregation of food waste a precursor to a circular economy is very important, and legislation is required in this regard. Circular economy model would help to mitigate the greenhouse gas emission, particularly by decreasing the quantity of food that goes to waste. So there is need to map the stakeholders. So some work is because there is very limited research work done on the food waste, and particularly in the context of different supply chains. So survey of stakeholder and actors in the food supply chain in the big city regarding reducing and managing food waste, recycling, and adoption of green digital technologies for food waste management is required. So we need case studies on technological solutions, policies and regulations. Their analysis is required, and sensitization and capacity building of stakeholders in the supply chain of food industry is required. So these are my some of my presentation. So if you have.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shahbaz, for your presentations. Professor has discussed the problem of food waste in Pakistan and also point out the solutions, the sharing economy, the circular economy, and the role of green technologies. And he's also summarized the way forward. Like we need to educate people more on the issues. We have to develop like the technologies to attacking the food waste. And currently in Pakistan, there's a lack of robust registrations and the data. So actually that's happened in Thailand as well. One question I would like to address is that I'm interested in the registration in Punjab city. So basically that law required all the retailers to donate food to the people in need. So is there any like penalize if they're not doing that, or this is like a voluntary basis?
Yeah, still its implementation is voluntarily. It is a regulation. Still, it has to be made a law. So it is a regulation. So at least it is a first step that the food service industry, they have to donate the excess food rather than putting into the dustbin. So still its implementation requires to be enforced. As of now, it is voluntary.
Okay. So is there any clause that provide like immunization for the food donor for any liabilities that may caused by the food donations? Let's say that if there is like a food poisoning problems from the donors, so are they protected by the laws or things like that?
Yeah,
because
so far there is no such no such law for the but yeah.
Okay, because I heard that in Philippines they have like this clause where they waive the liabilities for the food donors. Yes. Okay, so there's one question from the participants. So will the central government issue any regulations on food waste management and incentive for surplus foods and the food banks?
Yeah, in fact, it is at the provincial level, because in Pakistan, we have decentralized system. The provinces are they are free to make their own regulations.
Okay.
So the central government, they can issue some guidelines, and within these policy guidelines, the provinces, for example, the central government, they are for the SDG 12 and SDG 12.3, they have given the guideline, and the provinces can make their own regulations. So far, the regulations are being made in the Punjab province, which is the largest province, more than 60% of the population in the Punjab. So there is, as I said, that during marriage ceremonies, you cannot serve more than one dish to avoid the food waste, and another regulation that I just talked about. So these are mostly at the provincial level.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much for your response. Okay. So let me see. So there's one question from the audience that, so you mentioned about the sharing economy, so like food bank and things like that. So the question was, is there any like specific measures, the type of uh, the policy about the sharing economies in Pakistan?
Yeah, there are some initiative, as I said, that there is a food bank, there are some food sharing applications, but the policy, this is the regulation, this is the first step.
Okay.
But still, as I said, that there are various barriers, like the implementation of regulation, the sensitization of people, capacity building of the stakeholders along supply chain. So when they know that there is a system and there are some regulations and there are some penalties if you are wasting your food and throwing in dustbin, then it can grow. The concept of sharing economy can further grow. So now it is at the very initial stage.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shahbaz. Hopefully you can stay with us longer. So if there's more question about food waste, I can address that to you. But for now, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.